Hello everyone, Adam Steele from Hot Pole Studios here, and today I am looking at the Clearmountain Phases plugin from Apogee Electronics. Apogee are most well known for their really high quality converters, preamps, interfaces, and they've been making high quality hardware for years and years and years. But they also make software, and it turns out they make really good software. This is a plugin that I am reviewing in collaboration with Produce Like a Pro. There is a link in the description to their blog and all the kind of stuff that they have going on there. There's also a giveaway happening there where you can win one of 5 versions of this plugin. So head over to there and click the link and sign up if you want to win a copy of this. It's a phaser and a flanger all together, and you can have them so it goes one into the other or in parallel or just one of each. Personally, I'm a big fan of the flanger. The phaser is cool. It's not my personal kind of thing. I will try it at some point in this video just to show you what it's like if it's the kind of thing you are looking for. But the flanger is exactly what I've been looking for years, because for me, most digital software versions of flangers always seem to have something in them that I don't like. It's kind of there's a character to digital versions of flanging, or at least has been up until now, that has made me uncomfortable. That kind of sounds like, I don't know. You can hear it in the top end. It's a kind of a scratchiness that makes it sound not very nice. Now, this is a really powerful plugin, and I've got several versions of it on this track. This is Maysetto's Take My Breath Away, which is kind of a medium tempo rock ballady type thing. And so let's have a look at one of these guitars that I have this on. There's 2 guitarists here. This is Kyle Main. There we go. So this is using the flanger. I'm just going to solo. I'm going to play this section first.
'Cause every little thing you say, takes my breath away. I can only fall asleep and take your will from you. I'll never let the moment break, no matter bad thing you say.
There we go. So I'll just solo this track. This is that one. This is this track with the I used a preset to begin with called the Stereo R&B Rhodes, because what I was looking for was something that was subtle. Without it, this is just mono. And there are a few options and ways to make that sound stereo, because otherwise it kind of interferes down the middle of the mix with the vocals and the kick and the snare. But what I did is I used this flanger on the Rhodes preset, and it does this. And so there are quite a few controls to go at. There is a little button here that can hide all the advanced features, but the advanced features for me are what make this really stand out. So there's let's just go through the basics. There is a sweep, which is how much it does the flanging thing. If that's at 0%, you can use this manual knob, and you can manually turn that as and when you like. So you can move it not to a particular speed or pattern or anything like that. You can then do it on command. There is a wet dry, which goes up to 50%, and then just the delayed audio there, which the more and more you push it, 50% is where I would consider it to be the maximum flanging, because that's the equal percentage between the moving sound and the original sound, so that's when you get the most effect. But you can go beyond that to get a really kind of warped, distorted effect. And then of course there's in and out, and so there's the sweep and there's the speed of the sweep, so we could go super fast with it, and that would sound weird. So I've got the speed just below 1 a second, just below 1 hertz. You can Lfo Sync. So if I turn that on, that will now move per bar or 2 bars or that kind of thing. So it will move in tempo with the song if that's what you want. For this, though, I wanted it specifically not to be to the beat of the song so that it stands out, to use it as more of an audible effect. The advanced stuff is where it gets really cool because there are 5 choices here of BBD, which is Bucket Brigade Delay, which is how these kind of analog flangers work, is that they have different delay times that they can move between, and different chips have different times and different sonic characteristics. And so there's TCA, SAD, MTE, MN, and then there's a special one called wide, and you'll see the numbers change on the manual. So they go more and more and more extreme as you go. So the TCA, which is my favorite one for subtle effects, sounds like this. Then there's the SAD, which is longer. NTE. MN. Whoa, that is absolutely bananas. And then, of course, there's this wide mode, which sounds huge. Yeah, one of my favorite things about this plugin is that as I hover over all of these, it gives me really nice detailed descriptions of what they do, how it works. So I don't have to open a manual and I get a full explanation. That is brilliant. Well done, Apogee. That means a lot, because that means that now I can look through and go, oh, so this does that, this does that. There's a button that says tape flange mode, also known as zero crossing flange, and it explains it here. So there's a fixed delay with the dry signal so that we get kind of a pre-delay and it sounds slightly weird. And you do get that more effective kind of jet flange kind of thing because of the way that works, which is great. Feedback is to do with kind of feeding more of the flange sound back in. A little bit can make it sound really extreme, but loads can make it sound wacky. So it really goes bonkers. And then if that's something you want but you don't want to affect the low end, you can take some low end out of that feedback. And you can actually flip the polarity of the feedback loop, which sounds different again. So you can get some really quite extreme flanging sounds. The LFO is really useful for stereo stuff. At 0 degrees, this is going to sound not mono, but the 2 sides are going to be flanging at the same time, so it doesn't make for this big wide stereo thing. And so by changing that by a certain number of degrees, the left and the right side will move at different times, and suddenly that makes it sound like a full stereo effect. And that, again, the word stereo isn't quite right, because if you feed this a stereo signal, even with a 0 degree LFO, it will give you a stereo output, but it won't have 2 different flanging times. So it won't give you that big wide thing. And then last but not least is the high pass filter for the flanged effect. So again, if it's affecting your low end negatively, you can stop it from doing that. And for that reel, you could hear there kind of a jet moving. That was because I was flipping the polarity all over the place, and that was really causing some extra, phase issues, but not as a phaser. Let's change the module configuration to the phaser, which moves all this open, and you can hear a much more pronounced effect with the phaser. And you can choose the number of stages. If you choose an odd number of stages, it sounds much darker. And if you go all the way to 12 stages, it sounds massive. And let's turn up that feedback. So yeah, this is why I prefer the flanger to the phaser, because it really gets too much for me for what I want most of the time. However, there may be some times when you want a phaser effect in the mix to really make something pop. And so there are very similar controls with the manual LFO and all that kind of stuff, same between them. And you can have it so that you pass the flanger sound into the phaser sound. And depending on how extreme the settings are, you can flip it round so the phaser actually goes into the flanger, so it's one then the other backwards. Or you can use them in parallel so that they both work at the same time, kind of alongside each other rather than one making the other react. And yeah, it can really start to mess with the stereo signal. But depending on what you want, that could be really useful. So I'm going to get this roughly back to where I had it originally. And you'll see with this disabled, this guitar suddenly kind of sits right in the middle of the mix and is kind of in the way.
Let the moment break. Don't matter about a thing you say. I can only fall asleep and take your will from
Now, if I turn that back on again, there we go. Another place that I've used this is on the drums. So let's just use this. I've kind of done the Led Zeppelin Kashmir thing. So let's bring this up. There we are. And as it says Kashmir drums, and I've used the phaser on this. That was the preset, which I have changed. I've made it a little bit less full on. This one with the dry, wet fader, if you go above 50%, we start to get out of phase with the original signal. So 50% is kind of where you want it to sit if you want the maximum effect. But what I've done here is on these build-ups, I've had this turn on. So suddenly the dry will go. And I've just left it on long enough to hit the first crash as the mix is, of the phaser is starting to go towards just dry. And that means that you get an interesting whoosh on the crash there, but that's it. So that means you'll hear it now as I unsolo this and turn this on the build up to the drums. You'll hear rather than just a flat, boring da 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 da, it's got some movement in it now.
when you do. 'Cause every little thing you say, you know it takes my breath away. I can only fall asleep and take your will from you. I'll never let the moment break.
So it's very subtle, but it's there. And now on the end of the song, this is where I really went a little bit crazy. This is on the master output. Before my bus compression and all that kind of stuff, I've got a flanger going on everything. But in this case, I've turned the sweep off. And I'm just going to have a little bit of feedback. And I'm using the manual control, but I'm using automation. So what that's doing is, as I want it, I'm going very slowly up to the top and then back down. And by blending the mix in as I want it, the whole mix goes really psychedelic, but then drops out with this mix fader right here, just before the drop of the big rock ending. So also at the same time, the drums are having more and more of this phaser on the overheads and then on the whole drum sound underneath as well. And do we even have a third one? Yes, so the solo's got a flanger, and this main guitar has a flanger here too. So it really is quite psychedelic on this point. Have a listen.
'Cause every little thing you say, you know it takes my breath away. I can only fall asleep and take the will from you. I'll never let the moment break. I'll never let the moment.
There we go. So you can hear as that built up, it went and it was gone before the big da hit. So that's where I would use something like this. Unless I was doing a song like Kashmir by Led Zeppelin, I wouldn't use it all the time. But it's nice to have that option. I know that a lot of stuff that's Tool has a lot of subtle things like a flanger on the overheads of the drums quite often, but only on the more psychedelic parts. But having something that sounds like an analog flanger and analog phaser is something that really works for me. So I'm going to be keeping this in my arsenal, my bag of tricks. And whenever I feel the need to pull a bit of movement out of something and get something to be more interesting in a mix, or even go crazy on that big psychedelic section of a mix, which quite a few bands that I like have done that as a feature on a song once. So it's the kind of bag of tricks thing where, you might not use that all the time on a master mix, but when you want it, that's probably what you want to do, because a lot of the, like I said earlier, the digital flangers, they don't sound right, whereas this one sounds right. Thanks everybody for watching. Hope you found this interesting, and hit the like button. That really helps us to grow the channel. Subscribe if you want to see more of these kind of production videos. Thanks to Produce Like a Pro for helping us to do this. And there is a giveaway, like I said at the start of the video. Link is in the description, where you can win one of 5 of these plugins. So yeah, get your details in there and get that sorted. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye. Hey everyone, that might be the end of the video, but if you fancy carrying on this conversation, we have a Discord server. Link is in the description. We're also on Patreon, which is something you can really help us with. We also are on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Hop Hole Studios. See you there.